Hello there. It has been a while. It's been about 6 weeks, I think, since I did my last episode. I have been consumed with finishing off my film Empathy Not Included. We've been shooting a bunch, and I've been deeply in post production, so that's taken up an enormous amount of time, which is, of course, amazing and satisfying. Um, there is a website now, and some of you have discovered it. There is a website for Empathy Not Included. It is www.empathynotIncluded.com. Some of you have found it already. I didn't do any kind of announcement. I just put it up and linked it in my bio and that kind of thing. Those of you that have already signed up for the newsletter, that's amazing. I'm going to actually ask everybody to sign up to the newsletter, and please go and visit the website as well. There's a unique strategy that we might be doing. But first, let me quickly, before I get into that, let me just tell you, we sort of came up with a very rough sort of synopsis-y outline of what the film is, for those of you that are like, what is this film you're talking about? So Empathy Not Included is a feature-length documentary exploring one of the most pervasive and often misunderstood mental pathologies in our culture, narcissism. Shot in 5 countries and viewed through the lens of 4 self-confessed, self-aware, malignant narcissists who openly share the secrets of how they operate with uncensored candor, the film follows their disturbing stories, juxtaposed with the growing body of wisdom from victims, survivors, scientists, and mental health professionals. While the term narcissist is thrown around freely and the issue seems to be everywhere in the cultural conversation due to the overwhelming omnipresence of social media, most are unaware of the narcissist's shared playbook and how pervasive their abuse can be, from the most intimate relationships to the actions of global leaders. It's all abuse. It's just a question of scale. By exposing these patterns of behavior directly from the mouths of the narcissists themselves, the film sets out to educate its audience to become aware of their manipulations and, by understanding their moves, protect themselves from falling for their self-serving lies and abuse. So that's sort of the very rough synopsis. I would really appreciate if you guys would go up, check it out, just visit. There's not a lot on there right now, but there is a little pop-up that shows up for signing up for our newsletter for more news. So those of you that remember way back, 2004, when we were releasing What the Bleep Do We Know, we did a sort of a grassroots campaign. And that's eventually how we got distribution. So we might do something very similar. There is a massive audience that we know would love to see this film. So what we're thinking we might do is, really reach out into the community of survivors and get them to get behind this film, which I think won't be hard. This film is designed for survivors. But we might do some sort of grassroots type, marketing and PR as we warm up to eventually releasing the film. So one of the things that would help enormously is if you go up and sign up for the our sort of newsletters for news. And the other thing is, what would be amazing, if you could reach out to survivor groups, those online accounts, those online narcissism accounts, whether it's, Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever, just reach out to them and let them know about this film. Send them the URL. Also, we have an Instagram account. We have a Facebook account. We now have a Twitter account. We have a TikTok account. Some of them are very small right now, but I know they'll grow with time. Share it with as many people as you can. And what we'll do is, as soon as we have more news, we will email you all and let you know. And also online, we'll be posting stuff online. And just before I get into the main topic of this episode, some of you probably know I do have a Patreon account. I do have some amazing patrons there. I am answering questions over there. I'm not answering so many general questions that I get on social media, and I do get a lot. And just please know, those of you that reach out on social media, I know a lot of you want me to look at some, groups, some cults, some leaders, some whatever. I have a limited bandwidth, given that I'm still obviously healing, but also I'm sort of shooting 2 projects right now related to this. And I'm finding, as I've mentioned to some people, that it takes its toll emotionally. So I'm finding every time I look at another story, it's another thing that starts to occupy my mental and emotional space, and sometimes I find it a bit overwhelming. So I'm just trying to narrow my bandwidth as much as possible to get these projects finished. Okay, so the point of this particular episode, something that's been on my mind quite a bit, um, is this, hatred as a path to enlightenment. So there's a tendency in spiritual teachings, a sort of framework that sees the human being as bad and God as good. There's this weird polarity that goes on. And I remember, in my very early life when I was a kid, I would attend the Dutch Reformed Church in South Africa and then the Anglican Church. And the consistent message was that, the flesh is sinful, but the spirit is divine. And that because we were the flesh, we were lesser than and lower than and kind of like, honestly, kind of icky. And then I found as I, left those systems behind and went to what I thought were different systems, which were not really different systems, especially in the New Age, I found the same kind of thing happening. A group that I was part of, many, many years ago, the whole idea was to master or overcome or conquer your humanity. And humanity was spoken about with disgust and ridicule. And the person who ran the group used to be a Christian. They rejected their upbringing, but I think they never processed the pattern of what they went through. So they ended up teaching the same thing. It was just dressed up in like some kind of a New Age frock, really. But the basic idea was that the human is weak and pathetic and flawed. And in Nixium, the words were different, but the pattern was pretty much the same. The idea, Raniere would always talk about how we as human beings satiated. We were so involved in pleasure and in good feelings. Talk about the pot calling the kettle black. Is that the expression? I mean, my God, the irony. And that we were addicted to our sensations. And there was this constant ethos that in order to be noble, you should not indulge in satiation. In other words, don't indulge in being human. Like somehow being human was a problem. These natural, normal urges were a problem. And look, of course we understand that as you grow up, when you're a kid, you just indulge every single impulse. At a certain point, as you grow up and as you become an adult, it's best not to do that. The shit you would do like as a kid, don't do it as an adult. We all understand that. But there's this this framework in which everything that was just normal and human was seen as lesser than and disgusting. And it didn't matter whether it was, my experiences with early Christianity, then the New Age, and then, in Nixium, it was all the same thing. In essence, you were disgusting for having these problems, and it was distracting you from nobility. In the case of Nixium, from nobility and consistency and ethics. And then the other day, I get targeted on Facebook by a lot of ads and a lot of spiritual ads, from spiritual groups and spiritual movements. I'm not sure why. I mean, I don't spend a lot. Maybe it's because of all my friends from my past. That's how I connect to them on Facebook. And there was an ad playing for some kind of retreat that I thought was really interesting. And I'm going to read you the copy. I don't want to talk about the particular group because it doesn't matter what the particular group is. But the copy went something like this. They were saying, everybody wants an ego death. Everybody and their mom wants to go to this Vipassana retreat or this plant medicine journey and have a glamorous ego death. But what is an ego death? It's the part of you that sucks, the part of you that is manipulative and strategic and dishonest and deceptive, and who plays small and avoids responsibility and who leeches energy off of others. And I was listening to this and thinking, okay, so there's this part of you that's horrible and disgusting and does these horrible, horrible things. That's your ego. And I was like, I don't think that helps. And here's the reason I don't think it helps. There's this natural part of us that has these natural urges, which some people call the ego. What happens if you say that that's disgusting and bad and like, a leech, um, and dishonest and manipulative? You're basically taking an aspect of yourself that does exist. And here's the thing. In a lot of spiritual traditions, there's the idea like we have to separate the spiritual from the human because the human is shit and the spiritual is divine. We have to separate them. But the thing is, the human is part of the entire whole. So now what you're doing is sort of like the equivalent of, I hate my fucking legs. They're horrible. They're disgusting. I should get rid of them, which makes no fucking sense. And all that happens is you start to develop this self-hatred for something that is part of you. And this program then that they were selling then goes on to, sell you a program to like rise above this, as though all of this is bad. And I've come to the point that I've realized for myself, I don't know if this is the truth, this is just for me, that this thing called life contains everything. Like everything's contained. So what happens when you repress or deny a natural part of life? This to me is an issue because what happens is you suppress a part of who you are. Now, of course, people, non-dual people will say that's not really who you are. That's just an expression of the deeper you. I totally understand that. I'm on board with that. But as a human being having an experience, you are suppressing and hating a part of your human experience. And it won't transform. It's not going to transform into nobility or some higher order or no or something divine. It's going to sit there and fester in being hated. And all that's going to happen is it's going to grow. And I think that's where this kind of splitting occurs in the spiritual world and the spiritual teachings is you have to rise above this. So now you have to deny all the things that you feel that you think are not spiritual, are not noble, are not divine. They don't disappear. They just sit there and fester in horrible ways. And then they get acted out on. Imagine people who are suppressing a whole bunch of things about themselves, and now they see that thing that they're suppressing in the world. What do you think they do? Do you think they go like, oh, I understand that's the human condition? No, they fucking hate those people that are expressing the thing that they're pretending they don't have. And then they try and attack anybody who is displaying the attribute that they're deeply ashamed of. Because what happens is this part of ourselves that we're hating and denying, it sort of becomes very shameful. And now we have the shame that we have to pretend is not there. And you've seen people, who are very rule bound and ultra religious, who they're so uptight, they look like they're going to crack. Because what's living underneath is this terrible, terrible fear that they're just a normal human being with these things that they hate so much. And that is beyond it for them. They just can't handle that. So they have to pretend it's not there. And eventually what happens, of course, is they crack. There's some kind of crack. I mean, and that sometimes it's some part of them they don't have access to. And suddenly they act out in these deeply inappropriate, immoral, and sometimes fucking evil ways because they just won't acknowledge that those things exist. I don't think it's healthy for us, and I don't think it's healthy for our community. And I keep thinking about, like, wouldn't it be better to look at the experience of life that it includes everything? I was thinking about the other day that argument that this hypothetical argument where somebody says, okay, so God created everything. Yes, God created everything. So then God created Satan and evil. No. Yes, no, yes. And it's an irreconcilable thing because of this framework. I feel like it's much more complex. I think that there's existence, right? All of these things exist in existence. It's all contained in the everything. Why try to pretend it's not there? Why try to make your legs disappear to somehow be holy? What if you could instead allow everything to be held within this vast container, and container is the wrong word because I think it goes on forever, but in this vastness, what if everything could be contained in the vastness and you could understand it? And I think what would happen, like let's say you have these, I don't know, hateful thoughts or thoughts of revenge or whatever it is you have in you, rather than hating them and burying them, which just makes them grow more and more and more, what if you um, looked at them and understood their genesis, understood where they come from and why they might be there and have curiosity? And my experience with it is that when I've done that, things soften inside me. Like I don't feel so obsessed with that thought that can feel kind of dark sometimes. I allow it into all of me, which is funny because it's already in all of me. It's really a mental game that we're playing, putting up walls in our mind, pretending that, like, oh, that thing's not there. It's all there already. Really, the issue is just allowing ourselves to develop the awareness to know it's there and to accept all of the stuff into the experience of being human. My sense is that if we did that, it would be much, much healthier for all of us. So that's the thing that's been really consuming me, is thinking about, and also with what's happening in the world, the last few years, there's so much hatred. And I keep thinking, is it to do also with the stuff that we repress, and don't want to see and deny and call bad, and then we see it outside and we just like want to destroy those people. We want to kill those people. I understand that in geopolitics things are much more complex than that, but I'm just thinking at a very human level, on an almost childlike level. Anyway, as I said, that's what's been on my mind. By the way, as I said about Patreon, those of you who do want to interact with me on Patreon, please go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Mark Vicente. I would love it if you would sign up there. I would love it if you would support everything I'm working on right now. And for those of you that have been waiting for my episodes for quite some time, I think there are going to be a lot more coming out this month and next month. There's a lot of stuff I want to talk about. And to some degree, I'm kind of trapped behind my computer working on the edit. So I'm not really going places at the moment. So I'll probably be creating a lot of content up until the end of the year. So thank you for listening. And as always, stay curious.